All right. Let's open the Bible real quick. Okay? Open the Bible up to Romans chapter 1, which we read earlier. And honestly, this is about all we're going to spend in the Bible, which is, as you guys know, is not my... It's not how we would normally do things. But we're walking into like a different discussion. And I'm going to explain to you why I think it's right to do it this way. Please don't be dead. Alright, you're going to now see how I fix my tablet.
Oh,
It's back.
Technology is amazing.
It is. It's amazing to me that works every single time. It's usually the second slap, sometimes the third. No. I have no idea. No, it just, the screen goes blank. And there's a loose connection, I think. So we're in Romans 1, and here's what it says. Verse 18. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, which is not what I want to get to. This is what I want to get to. Who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Because what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, having been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For though they knew God, they did not honor or give thanks to Him. You guys probably have... You know, I want to actually throw my mic on too. Is that okay? Can I do that, guys, still? I think we have batteries and everything, right?
Hopefully.
I think we do. You guys, look, I get the fancy eerie thing.
Whoa! Whoa!
That's fun. I'm like professional.
They make you feel like a rock star.
I know.
You like to sing with me on my song? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is weird. It's weird having this in this room. So most of you have friends, what I was getting to, most of you have friends that are in that place, right? You have people that you know that will argue against Christ. They'll suppress the truth of God, and they'll make arguments against God, and they'll argue with you about the existence of God. And here's one of the struggles with that. One of the struggles with that is you open up the Bible with them and say, but look what the Bible says. And they would say this about the Bible. They would say, you can't prove God by using a book that you claim that God wrote. Right? So that's the struggle. That's the battle. And so what I want to do over the next couple of weeks, and maybe months actually, not weeks, just bring me down a little bit, because I think I'm going to fight that a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about how you can share your faith with your friends, not so that you can win an argument with them, but so that you can get to the point where they will be willing to open the Bible with you. Does that make sense? So the goal isn't at the end of the day so that you can win every argument and you sound really smart. The goal is that they would at the end of the day be able to say, okay, listen, you have reasonable arguments. You have this is a reasonable discussion between two people. So what's the Bible say about your God? Does that make sense? So we're not going to use the Bible to get there. The end goal is to be able to open the Bible with your friends. And then we'll talk about personal evangelism. So we're going to walk through a series on apologetics, moving into a discussion on personal evangelism. So I know some of you are like, what's apologetics, Pastor Jack? Am I apologizing for God being real? Right? So no. Apologetics is a defense of the faith. All right? So you're defending the faith. You're not winning an argument. You're not proving you're smarter than another guy or another girl or whatever. You're just the goal is to have a reasonable discussion. How many of you have friends that are atheists that are really smart and use words like metaphysics when they talk about God? Anybody? I got some friends like that, right? Some of you guys do. We're going to actually so tonight we're going to look at the cosmological argument for the existence of God from a metaphysical angle. You ready for that? You guys ready for that? Right? And you're like, yet when you speak English, I'll be ready to hear you, Pastor Jack. just trust me. Here's what I want to do. Nathan, get me to my last slide first. My last slide first. Okay? So we're looking up here. Where are we? These are the things that we're going to discuss tonight. Okay? What we're going to get to is we're going to define what this stuff is. We're going to say we are finite. Finite beings need a cause. Finite beings cannot be a cause unto themselves. I'll explain that. We'll get there. At the end, you'll be like, oh, that's what he meant. A finite being necessitates the infinite. I don't know why there's an equal sign there. That's a typo. A finite being necessitates the infinite. Any other answer is an absurdity. So here's what that looks like. Because this is the argument from a baseline. Because you are, God has to be. Because you are, God has to be. Okay? So that's what we're going to argue here. So let's go all the way back to the beginning, and I'll take the slides from there. You got it? You know, I'm going to sit over here just because I got to look too. Right? Is that all right? Oh, this is the other thing about tonight. I am not looking here, guys, to do a normal preaching session. We're not exactly small, but we're small enough at this point that I want this to be a little more give and take. So when I hit something and I go through it and you're like, I have no idea what he just said, just say, hey, PJ, you lost me. Like, explain that in other words. Did we ever get Play-Doh?
I completely forgot. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries. Okay. Yeah. Do you mind getting? That would be awesome, Steph. Just one little thing of Play-Doh. That'd be great.
I thought you meant Play-Doh like P-L-A-T-O.
No, not
I
Play-Doh.
thought you meant like
We're going to discuss Aristotle, but not Play-Doh.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the metaphysical argument for God. Everybody say metaphysical. Yeah, right. You're like, does that mean aliens? No. Okay. So, what is metaphysics? Okay. Metaphysics is a study that asks the question, or metaphysics is the study that asks the question, what is real? Remind me again, Justin. It's not Nietzsche. Who was it that said that?
Descartes.
Descartes. Excuse me. Metaphysics is a study that caused Descartes to say, "I think, therefore I am." You guys ever heard that statement? I think, therefore I am. Descartes was a philosopher who seriously, this is what philosophy does to you if you get too deep into it. We're going to slog through the marshes of philosophy over the next couple minutes. He actually got to the point where he feared because he didn't think he really existed. And he eventually got to the point where he realized he had thought, therefore he... And you're like, that is so far from the world I live in. I don't think it is. I think you look at a movie or a TV show like Lost. How did Lost end?
They're all dead on the island.
A spoiler alert, right? They're all dead. And so that kind of leads right into this kind of thing. The question really is, what is reality? By the way, I just know that because people have told me that. I'm not a Lost fan at all. So, in this discussion, so metaphysics answers the question what? What is metaphysics? What question does metaphysics answer? What question does metaphysics answer? What is real? Okay, what is real? Okay, what is real? So, we're going to have to talk about the nature of God here. We're going to have to talk about the nature of God. You tell me what you think of when you think of the nature of God. You tell me. Come on. Things that you think of when you think of the nature of God. Infinite. Woo! Well done. What does infinite mean?
Never ending.
Never ending. Okay, give me some more. That was awesome. Give me some more. Things you think of when you think of the nature of God. Anything else? Nothing? What's that? Holy is good. That's character of God. So nature versus character here, right? So it's a little bit harder, you don't probably think often of the nature of God.
Without a start?
Without a beginning, which is infinite also, yeah?
Yeah, omnipotent.
Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, right? And there's another part of the nature of God. What? Unchangeable, immutable, eternal, which is, again, what we were saying. There's another part of him, and that is that he is invisible. Okay? So when we talk about the nature of God, here's what we're going to say about him. God is an infinite, invisible spirit. God is an infinite, invisible spirit. So here's what happens. People start saying things like this. People start saying things like, well, I can't see God. I can't see God. We're gonna use an illustration to express how stupid that is. Seriously, in a real way. Paige is sick right now, so she's homesick. She's actually been home for 2 days. She missed the soccer game. That's how sick she is. So we took her to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Wow, she's got all the symptoms of a virus. It looks like she's got the flu virus." So what he did was he took out a magnifying glass, and he started looking at her skin. And he's looking all over her skin with a magnifying glass. In her ears, on her head, on her nose, under her chin, on her back, on her left knee. And he's looking, and he got done with the magnifying glass. Thank you, Steph. He got done with the magnifying glass. He's like, I can't find it. I think she's got the flu, but I can't find the flu anywhere on her. So he grabbed another magnifying glass, much bigger. And he spends like 45 minutes looking all over Paige with a magnifying glass. On the back of her right knee this time, between her toes, behind her ear. Nothing. And he's like, listen, she's showing all the symptoms of the flu, but I can't find the flu anywhere on her. She must be fine. Does that make any sense? I want you to just think of that in light of creation. Creation is all the symptoms of a created being, and yet we have people out there with magnifying glasses saying, I don't find God here. I don't find God here. I don't see God here. So they're looking for an invisible, infinite spirit in His created work. There is no spiritual magnifying glass that finds God. So we're asking the wrong question. We're looking in the wrong places for God. That's the real problem. We're looking for something invisible in the natural world. Just like you can't find the flu virus with a magnifying glass, you're not going to be able to find God. She is actually sick, yeah.
But did he actually with a magnifying glass?
No, that was a complete lie. I would hope that you would realize that I would have left the moment he got his magnifying glass. Like, you're a moron, sir. Sorry. So that's the nature of God. Now, this negates the potential of direct detection, is what we're going after, okay? So the fact that God is an infinite, invisible spirit negates the potential of direct detection. In other words, you can't find Him with a magnifying glass, all right? You're not going to be able to see God. He's invisible. It's part of His nature. Okay, so we are finite beings. So when I say finite being, what do you think? Beginning and an ending. Give me some more things you think of. What's that?
Have limited knowledge.
Limited. Okay? So these are the kind of things that you think of. So here's what being a finite being means. It's restricted by time and space, which we are. We cannot be changed into something other than ourselves, which I'll illustrate a little bit later. Okay? So we have a beginning, we have an end, we're in space. I can't be here and over there at the same time. Okay? I can't be changed into something other than me. It has a beginning in time. It needs other things other than itself to exist. And you're like, no, I don't. I am an island. I'm a rock. Try being a rock in an island without any water or food. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to die. Okay? Then you'll be with the rocks in the island. All right? Its attributes, now hang with me on this one. Its attributes, whether essential or accidental, whether we were created that way or we kind of developed it, are to some extent influenced by other things. Okay? So something influenced the way we are. whether that's because of like a complete DNA mess up, or whether that's because, you know, both of my parents, like I'll give you an example. I have 4 children with blue eyes. That's got to be accidental.
We have 5.
You have 5 with blue
We
eyes.
have 1 with brown eye, BJ.
Yeah, and I got the one with brown eyes too, right? Maggie makes sense. The rest of my kids don't, because my wife has blue eyes, but I have brown eyes, and brown is a dominant trait. So I must have like this really great recessive gene for blue eyes in my body somewhere, right? So it's kind of accidental that all my kids have blue eyes, okay? So that's what being a finite being looks like. So then we say this. What is an infinite being, or an infinite being, okay? It's a highly unusual entity that we would not expect to encounter in our daily lives. How many of you are walking down the street thinking, I wonder who is infinite? I wonder who has none of the characteristics here. Excuse me, sir, are you restricted by time and space? Did you have a beginning, or were you just there? Like, you don't expect that. You're not looking for that, or you'd be asking everybody, oh, are you infinite? Are you infinite? Are you infinite? You know, it's just not something that you're going to bump into. And so we need to understand that. So that's, you know, God is infinite, and so he's not going to be around in the sense that we're going to be able to bump into him. How does a finite being necessitate an infinite being? In other words, how is it that you mean that God is? Are you hearing me on that? Do you understand what the question is? Do you guys want an explanation to the question?
No.
Shake your heads. Okay. How is it? Here's your argument. Here's my argument. Because Alex is, I know God is. Because Alex is real, I know God is real. Because there is a finite being, someone limited, I know there has to be somebody unlimited. Does that make more sense? Shake your heads. Okay, alright, good. Alright, so, how do we know that? Because a finite being needs to have a cause. What? Alex had to come from something. He had a beginning. No, he did not spawn, right? And even if he did, that spawn came from something, like that part. It's like saying, oh look, there's a laptop. Wonder how that got there. How did the laptop get there, guys? It evolved from a smartphone. I love it. Actually, I think the smartphone evolved from it. I really think about it. Right? It was built. It came from something. There was a cause to the laptop. Just like there's a cause to you. And so if there are beings and a universe that began, there has to be someone who began it. There has to be something bigger than the being. So, that says this. That means if there's cause, then there's some kind of change in the world. So, can I bog you down for a minute with the ridiculousness of oh, stink. I hope it works when I pick it up later. With the ridiculousness of philosophy. So we're going to talk about a few guys, okay? We're going to talk about, okay, can there be change? In other words, can there be nothing and then something? Parmenides of Elea said this. It is, and that it is impossible for it to be, is the way of belief. For truth is its companion. Everybody's with me, right? The other, namely, that it is not, and that it must needs not be, that is the path that none can learn at all.
We have this translated.
We will. Okay, so here's what he's saying. Being is all there is, non-being doesn't exist. In other words, here's what he's saying. He's saying non-existing can't exist. Only existing. I know you're like, I think my brain melted. Bear with me, because all he's saying is there can't be something that isn't. There can only be something that is. But here's the problem with that. that means nothing can ever change. Because you aren't there yet. Okay? So, that's not covering the whole thing. Therefore, there could be no change, no movement forward. So let's go to this next guy. Not Hercules. Heraclitus of Ephesus. He says this: you cannot step into the same river twice. You thought this was from China. You cannot step into the same river twice, for fresh waters are overflowing and upon you.
Yeah, that sounds
Here's what he's saying. So he disagrees with the other guy. The other guy says nothing can change. There is only this moment. Now this guy is saying this moment is just the next moment, which is the next moment, and none of those moments are the same. They're always different. You ever step into a river and get hit by the same drop of water twice? Can't happen, right? Because it's flowing. That's what he's saying. The whole world is a process to change. There is neither being nor non-being. There's only becoming.
It's like a motivational speech.
I know, right? Believe it or not, Aristotle got closest to the actual truth. Okay, here's what he said. Whatever moves is moved by somebody else. Whatever moves is moved by another. In other words, he's saying, listen, there is change in the world. Change happens, but something makes the change happen. It can't just happen. Okay? Let me express what that means to you and me. Alex is, correct? There was a time when Alex wasn't. Humanity is. There was a time when humanity wasn't. To go from wasn't to is, something had to get it there. Does that make sense now? So, from there being nothing to there being something, something had to make that change. It wasn't going to just go poof. Okay, now there's something. It's philosophically impossible. There is being, there is non-being. They're categorically different. All right. So there is things that aren't, and there is things that are. Okay. There is things that are, and there is things that aren't. They're not purple alligators with green spots. They are not. That's non-being. Purple alligators with green spots are non-being. Humans are. They are being. They're categorically different. All right. They're not. Give me. You guys were talking about the Iliad and the Odyssey. Give me a beast from the Iliad and the Odyssey. Cyclops. Although they're one-eyed men, but there are not cyclopses.
Cyclopes.
Cyclopes.
It's the plural. Yeah, cyclopes. Cyclopes.
There are humans. Okay. Change can't happen in the state of non-being. So, in other words, a purple alligator with green spots cannot become a pink alligator with red spots because it was never a purple alligator with green spots. Right? So you can't change something that isn't. If change happens, it happens in the state of being. There are therefore two types of being. Being that is, and potential being. Being that will be when something changes. Okay? Let me explain that a little bit better by defining what truth is. Okay. Defining truth. Something actually is true, something possibly is true, something necessarily is true, and something necessarily is false. Let me explain what that looks like in the real world. Something is actually true. Speaking of me, I have lived 40 years. You're like, holy cow, he's old. Alright. I don't look a day over 36. Or 7. Something is possibly true. I might turn 41. I might leave tonight and get hit by a bus. I am hoping not. Right? I'm hoping not. But I might turn 21. So it is possibly true that I will turn 41. Okay? Something is necessarily true. 2 is the square root of 4. You can't change that. There's nothing you can do to change the square root of 4. It is necessarily true. It is always true. It is actually true and necessarily true. Something is necessarily false. I will become a velociraptor one day.
What? That's crazy.
Right? It can't happen. it is necessarily false.
It sounded so
like,
sad when you said it.
Pastor Jack just taught me he's going to be a velociraptor. That would be fun. That's fun to say. Velociraptor.
You'll be
Okay, so here's what we're getting at. Something potentially true has to be based on something that is currently true. Okay? For example, something is possibly true, I will turn 21, that's based, or 41, that's based on the fact that I am 40. Something that is necessarily false, I will become a velociraptor, is false because I'm a human being. Therefore, I cannot one day become a velociraptor, as cool as that would be. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, what we find out from that is that change is based on potential. Aristotle taught us change only happens when a thing is changed outside of itself. In other words, if something is changed, it's because something changed it. Logic teaches us something potentially true has to be based on something that is currently true. You can't just make up something to be true because you want it to be true. It's got to be because it could eventually be true. I will not be a velociraptor as much as I want to be a velociraptor. Change requires something that is, like, say, Alex. Something that will change what is, like, let's say, Gabe. And the potential of what is to change. That is Alex with a black eye. Okay? Could Alex have a black eye?
No.
Yes! Will Alex just suddenly go, black eye, black eye, black eye? And have a black eye?
If I want to.
If you want to, no, that is actually not true. He will need a change agent to make that happen. Let me illustrate this. I need a volunteer.
Are you gonna punch
I will.
me?
All right, Joe, come. All right, Joe.
Oh man.
Here's what I want you to do. Give me something that Joe is going to make with Play-Doh. Come stand right here.
A taco.
No, not punching Alex. No, something easier.
A taco.
I will say, okay, a snowman. I'll go with a snowman. Joe, I want you to make a snowman. Go.
Hand me the Play-Doh.
No. Make a snowman.
Come on.
Okay. Number one. He has to have something that is in order to change it. Joe. Is this a snowman?
No.
Okay. Is this the shape? And okay, we're being philosophical here, so we can't say it's a snowman, or it becomes a snowman because it doesn't actually have snow. So, is this the shape of a snowman? Is that the shape of a snowman?
No.
Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to change this into the shape of a snowman without touching it. Go.
Go, Professor X.
Come on, use the brain.
Go!
Use the brain.
Why can't you do it?
I can't. I'm not psychic.
Okay, good. So, look at something that is needs something that will change what is. This cannot change itself into the shape of a snowman, can it? Right? Can't do that. Can't do that. He can't create the shape of a snowman without the Play-Doh. Something that is needs something that will change it. Now this is all potential. Can this potentially become the shape of a snowman?
Yes.
Change it in the shape of a snowman. Doesn't even have to be that great, right? Close enough. All right. Is this somewhat the shape of a snowman? Yeah, we'll go with that. All right. There, better. Or Pac-Man. We'll say Pac-Man, right? All right. Thanks, Joe. Have a seat. So I want you to see that, right? So what we have. Thank you, Joe. I want you to think about it this way. We have something that is not, something that is prior to time and space. It is not anything. Then suddenly, there is something. There's humanity. There's earth. There's sky. There are stars. There's a moon. Can nothing make itself into something? Can it do that? It can't. It can't. Going from nothing to something is impossible. It has to have something to do that for it. Just like the lack of Play-Doh does not allow us to change something, just like Play-Doh without Play-Doh, not Play-Doh, Play-Doh without Joe doesn't become the shape of a snowman, it loosely becomes the shape of the snowman with Joe, right? So I want you to understand that. It has potential, but it needs a change agent. It needs something to change it. All right? In other words, a cause without an effect is an absurdity. An effect without a cause is equally absurd. If Gabe punched Alex in the face, is there an effect to that? Yeah. He would be crushed like a small man. Would Alex grow a black eye with no cause at all? No, he wouldn't. That would be absurd. A cause without an effect is absurd, and effects without a cause is absurd. Both are absurd. So, we're talking about the finite and the infinite. Oh, let me explain that another way. Let me explain this part another way. You're watching a magician. Okay? You're watching a magician, and have you seen the magicians, the street magicians, that are like this? They're like, and then they start floating up in the air.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen these guys?
No.
Yeah. All right, now, the first time you saw that, what was your first thought?
Get away from my car, you're dirty bum.
Force.
What's that? What was your first thought the first time you saw it?
Should be in a string or something.
Right? All of you are saying the same thing in different words. You're all saying, how did he do that? You're not saying, wow, he broke the laws of physics with his mind. You're saying, how did that guy do that? Like, how did that happen? Because I know that's not real. There's a cause and an effect to that. Because he's finite, he is limited. How does he do that? He has shoes with metal in them, and he has an electromagnet underneath the street, in the subway system, or in the wherever, whatever he's standing over, a sewer sometimes, and that's how they do that trick. Anyway, so the finite and the infinite. Ready? A finite being, you are a finite being. You have a beginning and an end. You are limited to time and space. Those things needs a cause to exist. Somehow, this all happened. It never stops being finite. Therefore, it never ceases to require a cause. You will never be infinite like God. So you will always need whatever caused you to happen still invested in your life. You know that verse that tells us that God causes the earth to spin on its axis. He causes the clouds to move. It's still happening. If it does not retain the cause on which it is dependent, it will no longer exist. I'll give that to you another way. If Maddie were to stop drinking water because she would say, I'm not drinking water ever again, would Maddie continue to exist or cease to exist? She would cease to exist because she's dependent on water. In the same way, the universe is dependent on God. Okay, so in order for finite beings to exist, there must be a being that is not restricted by time or space, cannot change by anything other than itself, did not have a beginning in time, does not need anything outside of itself to continue, and whose attributes are not influenced by other things. What you need in order for us to be here, and this is an absolute philosophical truth, what you need in order for you to be here is something infinite to be here too. It must happen. It must happen. And as a matter of fact, the scientific model, guys, is moving to this point, at this point. They have given up, essentially. Forward science has given up trying to prove that you can create energy out of no energy. Because it just can't happen. There's another aspect to that too, by the way, that's important. The amount of energy in the universe is stable. It never goes away. But, so it never dwindles, nor does it rise up. It's always a stable amount of energy. But the amount of usable energy is decreasing. Which means that you could not have, the universe itself cannot be infinite. Because if that energy is decreasing, it will have an end one day. Does that make sense? So you could say, well, the universe happened and it made us and it came out of energy. No, because energy doesn't increase and it doesn't decrease, but it's declining. It's wearing away. So there has to be something bigger. Science is adopting this. Philosophy adopted it a long time ago. Because you are you, God must be God. We are finite. Finite beings need a cause. Finite beings cannot be a cause to themselves. You can't be nothing and think, I want to be something, and then be something. I want to be a philosopher out there. It's not going to happen, right? And you always do it in that voice. A finite being necessitates equals, I don't know what the equals is there for, the infinite. Any other answer is absurd. Because the universe, the world, and each individual, and every part of creation is finite, it means there must be God. Now here's where this leaves us. We can accept that, and you know what? Some of your friends will be able to accept that. I know what their next question is, and I believe I know what your next question is if you're thinking logically, and we're going to start to tackle that next week. How do we know our God is the God? That's the next question. It's easy to prove the existence of God. That's why there are far more agnostics than there are atheists. Agnostic means I believe that God's out there, but I don't know anything about him. He's unknowable. An atheist believes there is no God. There's no created being. And atheism is waning. And it has to. Because philosophically and scientifically, the finite proves the infinite. So, that's what we're going to start tackling next week. Leaders. You can cut me.